The position I'm going to take on the question, are we truly free, is that we are not truly free. The slightly longer answer is that we have made enormous strides since 1994. We shouldn't be glib and ahistorical about what we achieved when we defeated the apartheid edifice. However, we also shouldn't romanticize 1994. And one of the nice things about being younger, I'm not that young anymore, but I wasn't old enough to vote in 1994, I turned 40 a couple of weeks ago, is that sometimes as younger South Africans, we can be very ungrateful about what the likes of Karima or Dr. Nzimande did for us collectively as a society, but sometimes we are also usefully, psychologically distant from the past and can be dispassionate about how true we really are. So I want to make a couple of points. Firstly, what does freedom mean to me? Freedom cannot only be defined in terms of political freedom. When ANC politicians talk about freedom and they want to remind you that we are truly free, what they usually mean by that is that we have regular, free and fair elections. They talk about political freedom. I don't think that that conception of freedom is good enough, because political freedom means nothing to someone who's sitting in Alex who doesn't have a home. Political freedom means nothing to a woman who can't jog at 5 in the morning because she might be raped. Political freedom means nothing to a woman like Karima who can't jog past a construction site without being catcalled by men who are misogynistic. Political freedom means nothing to the young people in this room with uniforms on who are at school, the schools that Dr. Blade and Nzimande are so proud of, but who at the end of matric may not be able to slot into the economy because the economy isn't as democratic as our elections. So what do I mean by freedom? I mean by freedom economic freedom, social freedom. I mean the opportunity to live a life that is filled with flourishing, not just the ability to go to elections every 5 years. And I think we need to be expansive in our definition of freedom. If we then look at the stats, how free are we truly? Well, he is right. We indeed have achieved a lot. There are many communities, which is something the opposition parties, Dr. Nzimande, Karima and I agree on this, often forget. There are many communities that have no clinics, for example, no ambulances, no police services. And when your baseline is absolute degradation because of the lack of services that were not provided by the apartheid government, then of course 25 years later there's a lot to be grateful for in the many ways in which you are free. But I'm afraid there are many unfreedoms that we have to confront as South Africans. There are many unfreedoms. For me, the most important is how undemocratic and how racist the structure of our economy remains. And the people who are the worst losers are the poor black majority, the very ones that the ANC pretend they are in service of when they describe themselves as a multi-class formation. But in reality, we have an ANC-led government that is actually middle-class and anti-poor and anti-black. The question then becomes, who's responsible for this? And I'll come back to this later because I've only got a minute left for my opening statement. Where I would agree in part implicitly with the Minister's opening statement is that any sober structural analysis of where we've gone wrong can't begin and end with the state. I've got to ask myself, if I really am an ally of women, if I am a feminist father, what am I doing to raise my son to not be catcalling, for example? I have agency. If I'm a CEO, if I'm a white 60-year-old CEO, what am I doing to reduce income inequality in my company? So we can't be state-centric only when we talk about who is responsible for the unfreedoms. We are all collectively implicated in the unfreedoms. I'm afraid, however, and we can debate this shortly, the lion's share of the blame, Karima, must go to the state. The state has a monopoly on policy. The state has a monopoly on lawmaking. The state has a monopoly on collecting our taxes and deciding how to disburse it. The state has a monopoly on force. So, of course, the lion's share of the blame goes to the state. And a little bit later, I want to talk, looking forward to the question, what can we do? But in the first instance, it pains me to say this because many racists will love me saying this, but I'm saying it from a position of love. We are not, Dr. Nzimande, a country that can really be described as truly free.